Good morning. Welcome to the Weekly Affair. This program focuses on the impact of COVID on all facets of our lives. Today we're going to be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the sporting activities, especially in Zimbabwe. When the COVID-19 broke out, the governments of the world came up with restrictions to try and contain the virus, and sporting activities were greatly affected. So to discuss that, I invited the newly elected CEO of Highlanders Football Club. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, viewers. Thank you, Sikhangele.
Okay, thank you for agreeing to have a seat with me today at our show, The Weekly Affair. So you are the new CEO for the Poso. Would you want to share with us how you have been finding that?
Okay, thank you. Maybe initially, let me thank you very much for inviting us to this program. I note that when it comes to the effects of COVID-19 or COVID-19 itself, it has been discussed, but there have not been conversations around how COVID-19 impacted on sport in general and football in particular. So we are very, very grateful for this opportunity. Maybe before I do that, you asked me to share my experience as the Highlanders CEO.
Yes.
It has been a very, very challenging experience, but a very good one for that matter. It's a responsibility that comes with its own fair share of challenges. So, given the fact that it's a historic appointment, if you like, because I become the youngest top football administrator in the history of Zimbabwean football. So it's it comes with a lot of pressure, with a lot of expectations. But what is life without challenges anyway? So
interesting.
We are happy. I'm happy for to take up these challenges. It has been an amazing journey. Highlanders is a very big institution. It's a very big brand. So it is, as I say, it's a responsibility that comes with its own fair share of challenges. But I think so far so good. So far so good. We have managed. And most importantly, I'm grateful to the club itself, the leadership, the executive, and the board for the support that they've given me so far.
That's wonderful, and well done for making it thus far as the youngest CEO in Africa, right?
Yeah.
In the history of football. That's a very big thing. How did COVID-19 impact the sporting activities in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, it was. I think it's one of the sectors that was hardly hit because, by its very nature, football it's a crowd activity. It's an industry that thrives on numbers. So the unfortunate part is that the COVID-19, when COVID-19 struck, we had to pause our activities. We saw in other countries where clubs were playing in empty stadia. Unfortunately, in Zimbabwe, we couldn't even do that, given the expenses that were associated with playing football. For instance, there was a concept that was very famous during that time when COVID-19 was actually at its peak, called the bailout concept, which required for teams, for them to be able to play football, to isolate, to go where they are not, where they would not, have any sort of contact with the community. So that on its own was actually a huge responsibility that realistically all the clubs here in Zimbabwe could not cope with. So as a result, we had to stop playing football. And the moment you stop playing football, it means you have stopped life in football, because even corporates themselves, the sponsors, they want to sponsor where their activities. When there's no activities, they stop sponsoring. For instance, we at that time were being sponsored by a government parastatal, Net1, okay. And when COVID-19 broke out, they had to refocus, to rechannel their resources towards fighting COVID-19. Where it was a just cause, because life was more important than football. So they had to stop sponsoring football. But the fact that there was no activity didn't mean that it didn't mean that we had no expenses to cater for, because we still had a wage bill to deal with. You remember, you have players, they are contracted, they're employees. Even if they're seated at home, they're still contracted. They needed to be paid salaries. So it was hectic. It was a very, very difficult situation. But maybe on the positive, those are such situations that that provokes creativity. Yeah. Where you end up being creative. For instance, we ended up applying for a mine. We got a special grant from the government. Wow. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise, because those are the challenges that the challenges that came with COVID actually forced us to look at other income generating streams. So
you're saying you guys had to close, yet you had expenses. So how did you manage to keep afloat? I mean, the players and the administration as well.
Yeah, it was difficult, but we managed. I think one of our biggest, one of our biggest income earners at that point was the player movement. In Tanzania, football was still being played, so we sold, for instance, one of our best players to Azam of Tanzania, Prince Dube. Yeah, so we also, managed to unlock some of the development fees that we had not been getting for a long time, for players like Marvelous Nakamba, for players like Teenage Hadebe. Those are players we were entitled to the development fee when they were moving to other clubs, but we had not managed in the past years to unlock that those finances. But during that time we managed. So those are the resources that kept us going during that period.
And you were able to pay all the players?
Yeah, we were able. I think we're actually proud that we are one of the few clubs in the country who managed to keep on paying their players their salaries during that particular time where things were tough. We managed to keep on paying our players their salaries until a point where we found ourselves stuck. I think it was 3 or 2 months before things opened up, and we got another sponsorship in the form of Utande. Then thereafter, Sakunda then came on board. But for the better part of COVID, we managed to take care of our players. And maybe credit to our fans and members. Highlanders is a members-owned club, and we've got amazing fans, very fantastic fans. We even managed during that period to source groceries for our players, even though they were earning salaries, because we understood that in football, most of the money is actually on the pitch in the form of winning bonuses. So from where we stood, we understood that the salaries were not enough to sustain them. So we went out to source even groceries for them so that they can feed their families. So it was a difficult period, which I think from where I stand, it was a serious test of character, and I think. I don't think that Highlanders will ever have another period difficult than the period that we had during that period.
I love your confidence.
Yeah.
It shows that, you learned a lot, and so it's a blessing, as you said earlier. So even after the resumption of the sporting activities, you were forced to play without the supporters. How was the experience?
Yeah, I think, as I said, that football, by its very nature, it's a crowd. It's a crowd sport. It's a crowd industry. There's a lot of value attached to a fan, other than even the turnstiles themselves. Making money out of people buying match day tickets. It also speaks to the issues of of sponsorship, where corporates they sponsor sports as a way of marketing through sport.
Yes.
So they want to see those crowds, because at the end of the day, sponsorship must be a mutually beneficial arrangement where the club benefits and the corporate also benefits. So it was a blow in the sense that corporates were actually skeptical of putting their money in sport, without the fans, because they couldn't, market their products and services. And to make matters worse, we are struggling with television in Zimbabwe. There was no television. So sometimes you see in other leagues, they could just, they managed where fans to continue with football without fans, because at the end of the day, they knew that it meant that television viewership went up, because fans will still watch football. So corporates continue to sponsor football. But in our case, we didn't have television, so it was difficult to convince sponsors to come on board. So that was the biggest blow. And players continue playing. That meant that you have to pay them. You have to pay them besides their salaries. You have to pay them their appearance fees. You have to pay them their winning bonuses. So it was difficult. It was a difficult period. But the most important thing was that we had started football. So everyone was happy that we had started football, regardless of the expenses that we were going through. And maybe the most important thing to mention is that the expenses were actually even higher, because you had to adhere to COVID-19 protocols. That meant that you had to test players. We still do that now, but now it's a bit better because we've got fans in the stadium, so you can cover for those costs. But the players had to test at least maybe twice per week before they play a match. And in our case, for testing, I think for the whole team, we needed at least $250. So which meant 2 times a week, that's $500. So that was an expense on its own. It continues being an expense, but now it's better because fans are now back in the stadium. Sanitization, even fumigating of the stadium. So it added some costs onto the already strained budgets of the clubs.
Okay, so did you manage to get any bailout from the government or regional body?
Yeah, there's a point. There's a time where we got a once-off relief fund from ZIFA. I think it was $5,000. Yeah, so it was channeled towards the players' welfare, but it wasn't enough, as I said, because if you look at our wage bill for players, it is per month. It is actually maybe 3 or 4 times what we got as bailout from ZIFA, where it was the funds that came through FIFA, so they came through the association. Having said that, we still appreciate, we're still grateful, because it assisted us in a way to take care of the welfare of the players.
And what about the players? Didn't they gain weight? Were they still fit?
That was the most, noticeable negative impact of COVID-19, where players need to keep on training, maintaining shape, but the fact that they couldn't do that, they couldn't group up to conduct training sessions. Some, out of their personal discipline, they could train on their own, but some, I think, during the first days, they still had that hope. They kept on training, but look, a year, 1 year, 6 months, still not playing football. I think they gave up. Some started even doing certain things, to earn a living, to complement the salary that they were getting. So obviously, they were no longer training. So as a result, when they came back, the coaches were actually complaining that a lot of fitness issues. So I think it also explains why even during the first days, most players were getting injured very easily. It was because of that period where they became even rusty. Even the type of football itself, the brand of football that they were playing during the Chibuku Super Cup, it was not as attractive. You could actually tell that players are not fit. So those are some of the challenges that we had. And not only that, in football, the biggest business in football is player movement, where you move players to other leagues, to other clubs. Where you sell, I just mentioned that we managed to move Prince to just at the beginning of COVID-19. But you also look at the period that we were actually not playing football. It was a very long period where we had a lot of promising youngsters whom we expected that to move maybe to South African leagues or even to Europe, to make money and for the better of the players themselves, because moving to other leagues means obviously if you want to move out of Zimbabwe, you're going to a league where the club where you earn even better, and in terms of personal development. So that didn't happen. We feel sorry for a lot of youngsters who had that period wasted in terms of their growth, in terms of their careers. So those are the challenges that were brought by COVID-19 that we might not, we might choose to ignore, but it really, really damaged football.
I suppose it also affected the junior clubs as well, where you guys get your players.
Yeah, it affected them a lot, their development. For instance, the players that in 2019, when we last played football before we resumed after COVID-19, the players were in the under 13s. We were under 13s then. Now they have to go straight to the under 17 side, and under 17 you now the only development route that they have is the under 17s and the under 20s. They missed that stage of the under 15, so it affected them a lot. So even in terms of we're a club that believes in its junior policy, even in terms of players. So now we're a bit, there's a gap, because we couldn't. You find out that even now there is, in terms of the first team, there is a slot of 5 players, so under 20, as per the recommendations of PSL. But we've got only 1 player, because there was no activity. Junior players were not playing football for the past 2 years. So that on its own is also another challenge that we faced due to COVID-19.
How long do you think the sector will take to recover, like the whole sporting fraternity?
I think it will take a lot of time, particularly if you look at now the fact that maybe, let me start by talking about attendance in the stadium. We're a club that used to average at least 8,000 fans. At least 8,000 fans in the stadium going fan. Now, because of a lot of regulations, and now for fans to come into the stadium, they must be vaccinated and stuff. So a better part of the population is not vaccinated. So now we are averaging 2,000. So that on its own explains that it will take time for us to get to where we used to be in terms of crowds in the stadium, unless something happens, because some people are not, they're still afraid to vaccinate. We hope that maybe the brand of football will improve and maybe encourage people to vaccinate and come back to the stadium. But it will take time. Maybe from my projection, I think even 3-4 years for us to get there. And then on the part of of players, I think they've recovered. They've recovered a bit. If you look at teams, they are now playing. They've started playing better football. I think the players they've came out of their shells. They are now playing a beautiful football. And then obviously the aspect of the juniors, because now the junior leagues are still not. They're still not active. We have got also the women's leagues that are still yet to start. So I think we'll need 2-3 years to recover. But it might be even more than that, because remember, now as it stands, we are not even guaranteed that we are past that phase. Fine, it's better. We are now living a little bit, in a normal life. But it's not guaranteed. We are now going to winter, and things can go back where we are coming from. So there is a lot of uncertainty. But if things can go in the pace that we are in right now, I think we can, in the next 2-3 years, we can see a little bit of improvement in the sporting sector.
So what measures have you put in place to keep the club afloat in case we face another turbulence like the COVID-19?
Yeah, it's. I think the most important thing is that, as I said, that in COVID-19 you learn a lot of things, but the most important thing for us as a club is that before even the outbreak of COVID-19, we had actually sat down and had a strategy, a 3-year strategy. We did it at the beginning of 2020. So the strategy has got some pillars that you want to focus on. One of the key pillars was that of diversification, where we want to diversify our revenue streams, and as a result, we applied for a special grant, mine, that we got the license last month. So we are starting exploration soon. So these are some of the measures that we've put in place. We're also trying to commercialize. We've got a sports club, which we think can add a lot of commercial value to the club. So we are looking into all those things, or looking into all those areas. We have also tried to create a basket of sponsors and partners, to make sure that if one partner or sponsor jumps out of the basket, you still remain with other partners who can actually sustain you. So the most important thing is that some of these partners and sponsors are actually, they are long-term, and they are commission based, where as a club we are working for the money that we are earning. For instance, we've got Sanctuary, we've got Nyarazo, where we are agents. For instance, we're an agent of Sanctuary Insurance. So those are the measures that we are putting into place to make sure that the club becomes self-sustainable.
Yeah, because a lot of people have been complaining to say a club as big as the Highlanders, you're supposed to have quite a number of streams of income, so that when one fails, the other will pay. And also maybe in terms of being prepared when we have another wave, we never know where it's going. So maybe you have spoken to that, but maybe you can just add some of the plans that you guys are having, and how maybe other partners that are watching this show could come on board.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's the biggest, I think the biggest project that we have is that of mining, but it's capital intensive. We are aware of that. We are starting. We still need a lot of resources there, but we are very, very hopeful that our target is to have that project being our main income generating stream in the next 3 years from now. So that is the main that we're actually focusing on now. We are trying to put together resources and even partnerships. We're still looking for partnerships to venture into mining, because, as I said, it's capital intensive. We also managed to, in football business, one of the biggest business is the sale of merchandise, where we're actually launching our online shop for the replica jersey. We've got 4 lines, 4 pieces of kits, 2 home kits, 1 away, and another optional one. So we are actually anticipating to make money out of the sale of the merchandise. So we're starting with replica jerseys. We will then add some lines. You will add things like your tracksuits to beef up our merchandise. So we think it's a good starting point, considering where we are coming from. So it's very impossible for you to bring things together at once, but you have to start from somewhere. So we think this is a very good step. And as I mentioned again, that we have got a sports club that we are currently revamping. We have so far managed to plant lawn in one of the grounds, in 2 of the grounds actually. So one of the grounds is almost ready for training, because one of the expenses that we want to deal with. Currently we're actually hiring training facilities, but we are almost done. So we know that in the next few weeks we'll be using our own training grounds. So the same sports club that we want to to revamp. We want it to be, the club's, place, sports complex where we can run a lot of commercial activities. So we've got a lot of plans, and our plans for now, I think they revolve around that sports club. We want to renovate it. We know it can make a lot of money. For instance, there is a thought of putting on a wall where we're selling advertising space, things like that. We are also, we're privileged that even our, the advantage with Highlanders is that it has been in good hands for 96 years now. Generation after generation, it has always had good administrators, we're visionaries. We have got a camping house in Luveve. We are also looking forward to, renovating it, to turning it into something that can generate income for the club. So in all these activities, we'll launch some campaigns shortly, which I don't want to preempt now, but we want to involve fans and members. And we know that we have got a very, very loyal membership and fan base that will take part in those activities. And I think we can generate income from those activities.
So what is your message to the boss of fans who are all over the world? Okay. Multitudes and multitudes. Yeah,
my message is clear. I think I've always said this, to say, Highlanders is, as I've already said, it's a people's team. Yeah. Right. That currently I'm actually the CEO, or whoever is the chairman, doesn't necessarily mean that it's my personal property. It doesn't mean that it's my responsibility. So we always invite people to take ownership of the club. We want to revive that sense of ownership to the people, to say, this is your thing, this is your project, own it, want them to own it. We have previously been, receiving a lot of donations from the club. I am not that kind of a person who want to encourage donations, but we want fans to have that sense of ownership. So we are saying, even if Highlanders was to, strike gold in that mine, we'll still want people to have that sense of ownership. So that sense of ownership will be through what they've always been doing, because it's a community club. You want people to own it. So our approach is that of giving back to the community and also receiving from the community, so that you continue that status of being a community club. So we want people to come on board, not only donate money, not only donate the resources, but we also want them to donate ideas. So that's the most important thing that we want from the from the fans and members of Highlanders. They must come on board, come with ideas, we'll run with those ideas, and we believe there are a lot of people out there, Highlanders people, who are entrepreneurs with a lot of business ideas. So we want to encourage them to bring those ideas, so that our main job is to implement ideas and policies, because Highlanders is a community club. It is owned by members. It's the members and fans who must come up with ideas, who must tell us what to do. We'll consider those ideas, and we believe through that we can take the club to another level. And then I would also like to call for patience from the fans and of course the members. We know that we didn't start well this season, but from where we are standing, we are seeing a lot of positives. We think we are going somewhere. We know that the team will actually win matches in the long run. And also maybe to talk about the most topical one these days, where they call it the British disease, hooliganism. We've had some instances. For instance, last match in Zimbabwe, where a certain section of fans ended up throwing in missiles and invading the pitch when FC Platinum was given a penalty. That's not the culture of Highlanders, so I appeal to all Highlanders fans to accept the referee's decision. We're a big institution, and we don't want to be involved in such situations, because they soil the image of the club.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our show. Maybe if you can share with us where we can give feedback or communicate, where do we reach you?
Okay, we have a growing digital presence, and maybe I forgot to mention that for the first time, we're the club with the most digital community in Zimbabwe, according to Digital Sport of Germany. They do these surveys every year. So last year we're the best club here in Zimbabwe. So our people can actually reach out to us through our social media spaces. We've got a Twitter handle. We've got we are on Instagram, Facebook. We've got a Facebook page. We're also on LinkedIn. We are also on TikTok. The pages are just clear. You go there. We used to have a challenge of having a lot of pages, but now because of the work that I think we have done, now our pages are actually outstanding. If you go on Facebook, for instance, just type Highlanders FC, you'll see the verified page. Then on Twitter, Highlanders FC, then you also find us. So we are there. We people can send their feedback. They can send their ideas through our social media pages.
Okay, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. I wish you all the best. We wish you all the best in your endeavors and everything that you want to do. That was Ronald Moyo talking to us about the impact of COVID in the sports fraternity in the country Zimbabwe. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms at Side Zimbabwe. See you next week.